All right. Okay, people, welcome to the Paranormal Graveyard. I am your host, Roger Belt, and Christina has some issues going on, so she's not going to be here. But that's okay because that's the thing about working with a team. When one is down, you soldier on and send blessings her way and hope that everything gets taken care of. Tonight we are doing ghost towns. And since I'm doing this by myself, I don't have anybody to bounce things back and forth off of, so we're just going to do as we can do here. A little mischievous mood. I'm always like that. Anyway, the 19th century saw hundreds of resource-based towns spring up across the American West, many of which died when the resources dried up. And you guys know how that is. You have a gold rush, towns spring up, the gold pans out, the towns kind of get abandoned. That's the way that kind of works. So with silver and copper and all that other stuff. That's the way mining towns usually did. But others emptied out after natural disasters such as floods and earthquakes, never to be rebuilt. And while there are ghost towns all over the world, the ghost towns of America have a special flavor. Yes, they do, especially the Western ones. There is nothing more haunting than a once thriving town that has been abandoned and consumed by the elements. It doesn't take long for nature and the elements to overtake the cities and towns humans have built. We know this. In ghost towns around the world, nature has picked up where humans left off. And you can use the Mayan cities in the Amazon or in Mexico as a way to see that. They were completely covered and they had to be like cleared out and opened up for everybody to see what was going on there. But I just love the Mayan cities, so I had to throw that in. um, Slowly bringing down cement and iron construction or filling in homes with water and sand, whether people leave because of natural disasters or man-made ones, the outcome is usually the same. The towns fall apart. Here's a collection of paranormal graveyard ghost towns. And what is a ghost town? Basically, a ghost town is any historical town or site that leaves evidence of a town's previous glory. This could be in many forms: all businesses closed, municipal services at a minimum, rubble and old nails strewn about, ruins of former buildings, etc. Some places that are categorized as ghost towns, however, still have people living in them. Ain't that amazing? And though sometimes they don't want to be called a ghost town, most historians will continue to reference them that way, and the reason or purpose for its original boom is gone. And also historians and people like that will reference something that way as a means of getting uh, people to come and visit, which kind of gives them a rebirth. So I think that's a great idea. What to look for in a ghost town: scattered rubble or site where nature has reclaimed the land, roofless buildings or partially demolished buildings, boarded up or abandoned buildings, no population, a community with many abandoned buildings and a small population of residents, historic community or town functional but much smaller than it was in its boom years, a restored town, state park, or replica of an old town, community, or fort. And I don't agree with that. You you can't build a replica of a town and it be the same, okay? It may look the same, but it doesn't feel the same. You know, I mean, it's not the original. It's kind of like when somebody redoes a song or movie made by somebody else that was famous in its time, you know. Having said that, Dudleytown in Cornwall, Connecticut, which is #1 on the list. Dudleytown in Connecticut is often referred to as the Village of the Damned. Y'all remember that movie, right? Because of the strange rumors that swirl around it, founded in the 1700s, it was a settlement for farmers and was actually never a real town, though since become one of the most well-known ghost towns in the country. It was actually land owned by the Dudley family, who allowed more people to come in as it grew and thrived for a small time. Problem was, it was not ideal land for farming, so over time people just sort of left and went to places with richer soil and better farming conditions. Thing is, the place has quite a reputation now. Rumor is, for us locals who live in the Northeast anyway, is that if you visit this abandoned town and take something, and I've heard this and I've read about this before, if you visit this town, you take something with you when you leave, you place a curse upon your family. But that is the thing that makes ghost towns so cool. The most likely untrue statements and rumors that seem to surround them. North Brother Island in New York. What blows to mind about North Brother Island is that people do not normally associate ghost towns with New York, especially considering how close this is in proximity to Manhattan. This island housed a quarantine medical faculty for people suffering from serious and deadly illness. North Brother Island is most well known for having the hospital that housed Typhoid Mary. Interesting, huh? Though the hospital took on different cases over the years, veterans and such, it eventually closed down in the 1950s and has been left abandoned to scare away people ever since. Once home to numerous quarantine hospitals, North Brother Island in New York City's East River is currently unsafe and illegal to visit. City council members are working to open the 20-acre ghostly isle to the public. However, considering it an important piece of history as well as an area that's visibly spellbinding, now full of decaying buildings and hospitals overrun with lush greenery, North Brother Island was where the famous Typhoid Mary was sent into quarantine. Born Mary Mallon in County Tyrone in Ireland, she immigrated to the U.S. at 15 and became the first U.S. resident identified as an asymptomatic carrier of the pathogen associated with deadly typhoid fever. Mary worked as a cook for the affluent. She was symptomless and unaware of her disease, and as a result, she infected 53 people, 3 of whom died. Through her cooking, she was arrested and quarantined for the remainder of her life and died in isolation, but not before becoming a minor celebrity of sorts. The abandoned island has been virtually untouched in a half a century and is strongly believed to be haunted. There was a morgue on the island for the many patients who didn't survive, including Typhoid Mary herself. While the modern experience on the island is beautiful to some, like council member Levine, many others would consider it to be quite eerie. To visit there was an experience unlike any other that I've had, he said, adding that it was visually spellbinding. For years, the island has attracted urban explorers who enter illegally and photographers who have revealed in the contrast between the decaying man-made structures that have been completely overrun by nature. It has also become a sanctuary for migrating birds. Okay, so we still have birds that live there. Okay, it's kind of hard for me to watch the chat room and do this by myself, so I hope you guys will bear with me. If something comes up over there and I miss it, help each other out, please. Bodie, California. Everybody's heard of Bodie, I'm sure. Founded during the gold rush by prospector W.S. Bodie, who discovered deposits of the precious metal in 1859 in nearby hills. Bodie is a ghost town preserved in a state of arrested decay. At its peak, this Wild West boomtown had a population of 10,000 people. Mining activity started to decline during the early 20th century before shutting down completely by the 1940s. Today, Bodie is a state historic park with more than 100 deserted buildings. Interiors are left just as they were when it became a historical landmark in 1962. And while you can't go inside the buildings, you can peer through the windows of the still stocked stores to see products your grandparents might have used. But watch out, legend has it that anyone who takes an artifact from the town will be visited by a curse. Sounds like the one we just talked about earlier. Though that might be just a sly preservation strategy. Excuse me. Now, why would you, and I have to ask this question, why would you visit a ghost town turned state park and you know that people coming to visit is what helps keep it going, but yet you go there to visit, but you can't go in any of the buildings? You can look through the window. I'm going to pay you to look through a window. I'm sorry, that just ain't me. Okay? If me and my camera ain't welcome inside, I ain't welcome. And you know I'm going to be filming stuff. Dunton Hot Springs, Colorado. Want to rent an entire ghost town for a wedding or corporate retreat? You're in luck. This former mining camp, whose population peaked at a few hundred people around 1905, once comprised about a mile of log structures along the West Dolores River. The mines were exhausted in 1918 when most people left the town, but two residents purchased the whole thing a few years later and began operating it as a cattle ranch. In the mid-20th century, the place became a dude ranch for tourists. That's the word I was looking for. Before being purchased by German investors in the 1990s and undergoing a major renovation. The new owners describe it as a perfectly restored ghost town, where you can enjoy some rustic old-fashioned ambience alongside your meals, massages, and high-speed internet. A ghost town with high-speed internet. Now, that's the ticket. What can I say? Thurman, West Virginia. Back in the days when America ran on coal, back in the days. I think some of it still does. Thurman thrived as a classic Appalachian boomtown. Area coal fields brought in more revenue than anywhere else on the Chesapeake or Ohio Railway, and local bank accounts bulged. At its height during the early decades of the 20th century, Thurman boasted 2 hotels, 2 banks, 2 restaurants, a movie theater, and plenty of stores. But when coal usage declined and the spell took over, the town slipped into a decline. At the last census, the population listed at 5. Today, the National Park Service owns much of Thurman and has been repairing and stabilizing the abandoned buildings. They restored the local train depot as a visitor center in the 1990s. Kennett, Alaska. I looked at this place, man. It's a huge thing, and it's like all one great big building. The abandoned buildings of the Kennett mining town are nestled in America's biggest national park, Wrangell Street. During its boom years, at the beginning of the 20th century, the mine produced about 200 million worth of copper ore, and the town had its own hospital, school, and skating rink, among other structures. Declining profits forced the mine to close in the late 1930s, and it decayed for decades until the National Park Service bought it in 1998. The Park Service is now stabilizing the buildings and runs a visitor center in the old general store. St. Elmo, Colorado. I wonder if that's where they got the song St. Elmo's Fire. Once home to almost 2,000 people lured by the area's gold and silver mines. St. Elmo was founded in 1880 but abandoned in the 1920s. Locals say the residents left on the last train out of town and never came back. The place used to be home to dance halls, a school, hotels, and even a telegraph office, but is now mostly picturesque looking dilapidated wooden structures. However, you can shop in the general store in the summer, rent ATVs, and stay in one local semi-rustic cabin. Bannack State Park in Montana. Bannack was named the first territorial capital of Montana in 1864, 2 years after a prospector named John White struck gold on Grasshopper Creek. Bannack didn't stay the capital for long, however. That title was transferred to Virginia City, Montana, shortly after gold was found there too. Mining continued at Bannack in fits and starts until the 1930s, although the town wasn't entirely abandoned until the 1950s. It's now a well-maintained state park with more than 60 structures, many of which you can explore. A rare opportunity for a state-run ghost town. You know, I don't have a problem with them turning these ghost towns into state parks. You know, and they want tourism. That's what helps pay for to keep the upkeep of them. But if you're gonna have a ghost town that thrives off of tourism, you know, make it where people can go in the buildings and see what it was like in the day. You know, I mean, really, who wants to go pay to look in a window? Well, I can take a picture through the window. Look here. Okay. Anyway, so if they're allowing people to actually, you know, go in the buildings and see how things were in the day, that's awesome. I think that's a great idea. And also it helps to upkeep these places so that they don't, you know, just crumble and fall down. You know, so it helps maintain a piece of history. So I think that's cool. Rhyolite, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Nevada. This town on the way to Death Valley was named for a local pinkish volcanic rock, but it was gold that drove its brief boom and subsequent bust. Thousands flocked to Rhyolite after prospecting discoveries in the early 1900s, and no less than Charles M. Schwab invested in infrastructure that brought the town water, electricity, and the railroad. By 1907, locals even had an opera house. But local minds were quickly exhausted, and after the San Francisco earthquake of 1906 and the financial panic of 1907, most of the miners and their families decamped for greener or golder pastures. Rhyolite managed to stage a second act as a movie set for Old West Pictures in the 1920s, and today there's an outdoor sculpture park, the Goldwell Open Air Museum, near the entrance to the town. I almost want to call this next one Chewbacca. It's Chihuahua, Alabama. People once had big plans for Chihuahua, Alabama's first permanent capital, but its location on the confluence of two major rivers made it a major flood hazard. The town lost its capital status in 1826, but briefly rallied as a distribution point for cotton and the site of a prison for Union soldiers. After the Civil War, it became a popular community for freed slaves. But floods continued to bedevil the area, and by the early 20th century, most of the buildings were abandoned. Today, it's Alabama's best-known ghost town and an archaeological site where visitors can see the abandoned streets, cemeteries, and other historic ruins. Garnett, Montana. I wonder where it got that name. About 1,000 people called Garnett home around the turn of the last century, but by 1905, the gold was running out. I thought it would have been Garnett. A massive fire in 1912 didn't help matters. Some of the population hung on until after World War II, but today the town is owned by the Bureau of Land Management, which works to stabilize the remaining 24 buildings. The place is said to be Montana's most intact ghost town. Earlier this year, the BLM issued a call for live-in summer volunteers, but were so flooded with applicants that they had to stop taking inquiries almost immediately. Wow. Calico, California. Calico. Okay. Calico had a brief but shining heyday as a silver mining town in the 1800s and 1890s, with over 500 mines and 20 million of silver ore produced in 12 years. But when silver lost value in the 1890s, Calico lost its residents. In the 1950s, Walter Knott of Knott's Berry Farm fame bought the town and restored many of the buildings to their 1800s glory. It's now a major tourist attraction. In 2005, then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger proclaimed it California's Silver Rush ghost town. Not to be outdone, Bodie, California was recognized as the state's official gold rush town. There's a museum, a mine tour, a historic train tour, gold pending, and something called a mystery shack, which promises to amaze and confuse with its optical illusions. That's probably the most promising thing of the whole place, but you know, I would still love to go in one of those old gold mines just for the heck of it. You know, and as morbid as this may sound, please forgive me, one that had a cave-in where lives were lost and there's possible spirit activity, being as I am. So, with that being said, okay. Too many people having computer issues, wonder if something's going on again that the public doesn't know about. I don't know who else is having computer issues. I'm hoping that mine is over itself now. Took me a while to get it back up and going, but I think everything's okay now. Animas Fort, Colorado. Situated at 11,000 feet in the San June Mountains of Colorado, the little town of Animas Forks was once a gold and silver mining town built in the 1870s. Today, the ghost town, abandoned in the 1920s, is a popular tourist destination since several of the old cabin-style buildings, including a small jail, can be visited. The best way to reach the ghost town is by four-wheeler. Reports Travel and Leisure because it is located in off-road country. You know, if you're going to have a ghost town, and this is, again, I bring this stuff up because it makes sense to me. If you're going to have a ghost town that uses tourism as a base to help support and maintain, if it's in off-road country and there's not a main road to it, maybe you should put one in there. Or put in a small railway or something. Get a train engine with a couple of cars or something where you can bring people in, you know, and take them back out, etc. But that way, you know, people are not having to go rent four-wheelers to get up to a place and everything to go pay money to see. And it's all about money, right? So if you come up here or you go to that place, you know, well, you're down here at the lower end. Well, the only way you can get up there is you have to rent a four-wheeler from us, and then you drive the four-wheeler up there, you know, and then you bring it back and whatever. But anyway, I'm just saying, if it doesn't have a road, put one in. Or if it's not that far off the beaten track, put a trail up through there that they can hike up to. You know, or like I said, put in a little railway and a engine with a couple of passenger cars, you know, that you can take people up in. Anyway, okay. Salton Riviera, or Riviera, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, California. The Salton Riviera lies on the shore of an accidental lake in California named the Salton Sea, which was created when Colorado River swelled and breached its levees in 1905. In the 1950s and 60s, the shoreline of this new lake, the largest in the state, was a booming tourist attraction that, according to Vice, would regularly attract over 500,000 visitors a year. However, by the late 1970s, the ecosystem, this so-called miracle in the desert, began to collapse, according to Slate, as the water became increasingly saltier, polluted with pesticides, and depleted in oxygen. Fish began dying in droves, and their smell drove the tourists and residents out of town, a smell that is still present today. Ew. Just saying, folks. Ew, 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 ew. Okay. Okay. Where the heck was I? Okay. Did I miss one here? No. Okay, I got that. There's where I'm at. Okay. Goldfield, Arizona. Goldfield is one of the most popular and touristy, there's a word for you, touristy ghost towns in the Southwest. Located just outside Phoenix at the foothills of the Superstition Mountains. What better place to put a ghost town? This mining town dates back to the 1890s when gold was first discovered in the area. Goldfield sported 3 saloons, a boarding house, general store, blacksmith shop, brewery, post office, and school. It was home to about 4,000 residents in its heyday. Reports news.com AU. The town was abandoned after the gold vein faulted and the grade of ore dropped. According to Goldfield's official website, the town was dead by the mid-1920s. Today, the ghost town is a family-friendly attraction, reports Lonely Planet, featuring daily Old West gunfights, several gift shops, and a museum to keep its modern visitors occupied. Da, 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 da. And you are watching the Paranormal Graveyard. We are talking about ghost towns. I am your host, Roger Belt, and my lovely assistant partner, Christina Corzani, is having some issues, so she's on AIDA right now. Carrying on in the good fourth tradition. Coffee break. Deception Island, Antarctica. Now there's a name for you, Deception Island. Don't you want to just rush right out there? One place where nature has conspired against human habitation is an island off the coast of Antarctica. Although Deception Island is one of the safest harbors in Antarctica and a popular tourist destination. The fact that it's the caldera of an active volcano makes it a precarious location for permanent habitation. According to a management plan by the Antarctic Treaty System of a Norwegian captain began whaling off Deception Island in 1906, and Whalers Bay became a safe anchorage for ships processing whale blubber. Later, a cemetery was established and a whaling station that operated until 1931 was constructed. The United Kingdom also established Base B in part of the abandoned whale station in 1943, but it was abandoned in 1969 after a volcanic eruption destroyed much of the faculty. How about that? South Pass City, Wyoming. Now that sounds like an old west town, don't it? Another well-preserved mining town in the American West. South Pass City was founded in 1867 when the large Carissa gold deposit was discovered near the Sweetwater River. Located about 10 miles north of the Oregon Trail on the Continental Divide in the Rocky Mountains. Throngs of prospectors soon descended on the area despite the severe conditions, hoping to also strike it rich. Within a year, the population had swelled to about 2,000 people, mostly men in saloons, brothels, and the boisterous and dangerous life of frontier town were in full swing. Despite throwing themselves into the back-breaking work, the prospectors didn't find more large gold deposits. So by the mid-1870s, only 100 people remained. Homes, stores, hotels, and saloons fell into disrepair, with the last of the pioneer families moving away in 1949. Today, a handful of residents have returned to live in South Pass City, and the South Pass City State Historic Site features more than 30 preserved historic structures dating from the city's heyday. I think that's pretty neat. Okay. Click off, then click the link again to see what happened. What's going on? Meg having problems over there? Megadoodle? sound. Okay. Okay. Anyways, hopefully everybody's not leaving over there because I'm extremely boring. But all in good fun, you guys. Centralia, Pennsylvania, with smoke and noxious gases escaping from every nook and cranny. And I saw a video of this. It's pretty weird. Wow, it's going something about a mine that caught fire or something, and expelling gas and stuff through cracks everywhere. Uh, this Pennsylvania town has been smoldering since 1962. And its underground fire is expected to burn for 250 more years. A landfill burn gone array sparked the fire in an abandoned coal mine, which quickly spread into the veins of the coal deposits that had once been the key to Centralia's prosperity. When the initial damage was done, the catastrophe had scorched 140 acres of the town and the surrounding area. Residents evacuated, homes were leveled, and the highway was closed down as the massive fire caused gaping sinkholes, spewing fumes. Of the nearly 2,000 Centralia residents who were there when the mines caught fire, only 6 still remain, determined to make the few streets and buildings in this doomed town their home until they die, which may not be all that long if they're living in a town and breathing noxious fumes. Just saying. But anyway. That's how it goes, I guess. Glenero, Texas, New Mexico. Okay, so is it on the kind of split on the border here or what? I don't know. During the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, travelers packed Route 66, sending tens of thousands of people through Glenero, a tiny town on the border of Texas and New Mexico. That answered that question. That offered motorists a road stop with gas stations, diners, bars, Western-themed motels, and even a dance hall. When I-40 was built in the 1970s, however, drivers now bypass the former overnight desert oasis. Listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the Glenero Historic District includes the old Route 66 roadbed and 17 abandoned buildings like the Little Jerez Diner, the State Line Bar, and the State Line Motel. It's now broken signs announcing to non-existent motorists that it's the last in Texas, or the first, depending on your direction of travel through the American West. I'd still like to go check that place out. I think it'd be cool. Boulouville, Florida. Cleared of its natural forest in 1821 by Charles Boulou to establish a 2,200-acre plantation to grow sugarcane, cotton, indigo, and rice. This East Florida land soon also housed the area's largest sugar mill, built by Boulou's son, of course, John. Its title didn't last long, however, as the Seminole Indians set fire to the plantation and mill in 1836 during the Second Seminole War. Built of hardy local coquina rock, the mill's massive ruins now rise eerily among the large oak trees that have reclaimed the land in the 150-acre Boulou plantation ruins. historic state park, while the crumbling foundations of the plantation house and slave cabins show the volatility, validity, validity of Florida's frontier life. That's all, folks. No, I'm just kidding. Grossinger's Catskill Resort, Liberty, New York. In its heyday, the Grossinger's Catskill Resort was the sort of seasonal retreat featured in Dirty Dancing, where well-to-do families in the 1950s spent their summers lounging by its two massive swimming pools, playing golf or tennis, and enjoying the lush 1,200-acre surroundings. Just 2 hours north of New York City, in the winters it offered theater and skiing, the first place in the world to use artificial snow on its slopes. Of the cabins, cottages, hotel landing strip, post office, and more that served the resort's hundreds of thousands of guests until it closed in the mid-1980s. A few exquisite places still remain undemolished or horribly vandalized. One is the stately Natorium, gorgeously overgrown with moss and ferns, with sunlight streaming through its windows and skylights onto the graphited pool and abandoned lounge chairs. The other is the hotel's lobby and ballroom, where the twin staircases, massive fireplaces, and a checkerboard ceiling suggest its former glory. If you listen hard enough, you might still hear the tinkling of cocktail glasses on the cliffs of hills dancing a foxtrot. And you might hear Dirty Dancing or something in the background. Just think. Rolling Acres Mall, Akron, Ohio. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Is Meg still having problems over there? I see Mary done got her hammer out. Rolling Acres Mall, Akron, Ohio. Built in 1975 and expanded several times. The Rolling Acres Mall once housed more than 140 stores, a movie theater, and a food court. In 2008, the mall was closed and only two large retailers continued to operate, with all stores finally closing in 2013, having changed owners several times and currently in the process of foreclosure. The once bustling mall will likely be demolished. Ain't that sad? Until then, the 1,300,000 square foot space remains an eerily empty relic of modern civilization, with its cracked glass ceilings letting in snow during winter storms, as if the structure stands alone in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. So you know they're going to film a movie there, right? See more photos of this haunting abandoned mall. Okay. Yeah, they'll film a movie or something there. You know they will. Canyon, Diablo, Arizona. Not well known, but Canyon Diablo is supposed to have been even wilder and more wicked than Tombstone. That says a lot. This originated as a railroad town in 1880 that sprang up where construction of the railroad had halted until a bridge could be built over the canyon. There was a delay due to finances. It was not until 1890 that the rail bridge was completed. No law existed here since the nearest law enforcement was over 100 miles away, and the robbers and cutthroats had their way. It is said that any drifters either moved on or ended up in the cemetery. The saloons, gambling houses, and brothels ran 24 hours a day, never closing. Once the railroad bridge was built over the canyon, the town soon died. submitted by Tom McKern. Today, several foundations along the along with the grave of Herman Wolfe can still be seen at a canyon dive, along with the original limestone footings for the railroad trestle, which has since been replaced with a steel arch span. Coloma, California. Hello there, Sumo Cactus, Mr. Tom. Here's where the Great California Gold Rush had its beginning. Just north of Placerville, Coloma was the home of John Sutter, whose name will be forever linked to the Gold Rush days. Sutter came to California from his native Switzerland in 1834 and was granted some land on the Sacramento River. It was toward the end of 1847 that Sutter began construction of his sawmill at a site the Indians called Coloma. Sutter had a partner named James Marshall in building the sawmill. It was Marshall, not Sutter, who first discovered gold at Sutter's mill. Ironically, neither Sutter or Marshall profited from a discovery which should have made them independently wealthy. Among the things to see while visiting Coloma is the home of James Marshall at the time of his discovery in 1849, as well as his grave, which overlooks the site of his discovery. Settled along the banks of the South Fork between Sutter's Mill and Mormon Island is the first important mining town of the 1848 Gold Rush days. By the summer of 1848, Coloma had about 300 frame buildings and a big hotel under construction. Because of the remoteness of the location, prices were outrageous. Almost any commodity sold at the flat rate of $1 a pound. Shovels and picks were at least $50 each. Wool shirts sold for $50 each. Since the dollar was worth at least 100 times more than it is today, such prices were outlandish. But Coloma's hectic days were numbered. Richer localities up and down the Mother Lode were drawing away her residents. By 1870, Coloma was reduced to 200 residents. Where gold was discovered is now a state park with appropriate historical markers and an extensive museum. Some of the original frame buildings still stand and have been preserved as historical markers of the first town to emerge from the gold rush days of 1848. It's pretty bad, ain't it, when you're the person that discovers gold, but you don't get rich and everybody else does? Lesson learned here. Keep your big mouth shut. Get your wealth, and then you can tell people, hey, I found some gold up here. You know, but anyway, just saying. Okay. Delamar, Nevada. The gold rush was on in the Paranget Valley of Nevada when farmers in 1890 and 1891 discovered gold in the hills around the mountainous valley. While miners temporarily camped in Golden City and the town of Helene, the town of Delmar soon developed shortly thereafter when Captain John Delmar of Montana purchased the principal claims in 1893 for $150,000 and established the early settlement of the town. By 1897, Delmar was home to more than 3,000 residents and supported numerous stores, saloons, a theater, and other establishments. The extensive mining operation led to the town's reputation as the maker of widows, as the Delmar dust of silica dust inhaled by the miners led to many deaths. 2 years after 1900, When a fire destroyed half the town, Captain Delmar sold his interest to the mines, which had produced an estimated 8.5 million in gold. The new owners, under the control of a Simon Bamberger, Berger, Berger, continued to outproduce all other mines in the state until 1909, but the operation was closed soon after. The site was reopened briefly from 1929 through 1934, and evidence of a mining operation continues there today. Nestled in the Delmar mountain range are partially standing rock buildings, mill ruins, and a cemetery, which some relatives apparently still visit. It was in the early 1890s when a wealthy Frenchman, Captain Joseph Raphael de Lamar, good Lord, it take 30 minutes to produce his name, began development of the rich mining camp in the Delmar Hills. The town boomed from 1895 into the 20th century, finally becoming a ghost town because they couldn't pronounce his name. At the beginning of World War II, nearly a half century later, Delmar was known to many as the Widowmaker. Several dozen women were widowed because water was scarce. The crusher was run almost dry and created a fine dust that contained silica. The deadly dust was inhaled by the men, causing cirrhosis and an untimely death. The dreaded dust also pierced the lungs of women, children, and animals. Water had to be hauled to all houses except one where it was tapped. In this house lived the last Rose of Delmar, Angus Horn, who had been there since childhood. Her husband was one of the young men felled by the dust. She was one of the camp's first settlers, and among the last to leave, she was buried in the cemetery beneath a rose bush that had once bloomed at her window. Sad stuff, you guys. You know, think how some of these people had to live and survive back then. Hey, Michelle. Hello. Glad to see some people making it in. Did Paul ever show up? I hadn't seen nothing from Paul over there. Of course, I ain't had much time to look either. But anyways, Boss, Oklahoma. Boss got its start in the late 1890s when people began to populate the valley of Turkey Creek. However, when a flash flood occurred on May 2nd, 1902, it pretty much wiped out the town, washing buildings away and drowning several people. Not tempting Mother Nature again, the surviving residents moved out of the creek bottom to higher ground, and the new town was called Falls. The fertile farmland surrounding the area attracted many early settlers, and Falls grew to a population of almost 1,000 people by 1905. Soon, all manner of business sprang up, including 2 banks and 3 cotton gins. Stone buildings replaced earlier frame structures. A school system was organized, and several churches were built. By 1912, Falls had an electric plant, 2 hotels, and an opera house. After the town's initial rapid growth, it stabilized at about 500 people. However, in the 1920s, the town began to struggle as the nearby rail centers of Clinton and Elk City began to absorb much of the town's former trade. Later, the Depression and the Dust Bowl of the 1930s created further migration from the area. Still, the small town hung on, and in the 1950s saw a revival due to the increased use of the Air Force installation at nearby Burns Flat. However, the base closed at about the same time that Foss was bypassed by I-40, and those few remaining people began to leave. Finally, in September 1977, the one bank left open in Foss closed its doors forever. Today, Foss is but a reminder of its former past. The ruins of Cabell's gas station, which also served as a cafe and bus station, still remain. An 1894 church building and a pioneer jail are also left standing. But of the rest of the town, there are only foundations where buildings once stood and vacant sidewalks lining ghostly blocks that will never be used again. That's still sad, y'all. Seattle Underground in Washington. Did you know Seattle, as we know it now, was built atop another version of Seattle? No, I did not know that. All the stuff underground now was ground level in mid-19th century. Essentially, Seattle was fine until some idiot started a fire and spilled some glue, which ended up causing it to be a grease-based fire that would not go out. Much was destroyed, but in the process of rebuilding, they thought completely out of the box. They lined the streets with concrete walls and built up. Though it took years and heavy planning, eventually the Seattle you know now was built on the bones of the old Seattle. Underground Seattle was fully condemned in the early 1900s for years of the plague, but now there are certain parts of the Seattle Underground that have become open to tours, where you see things like the above photo, and there's not a photo, but and realize how utterly creepy the whole idea is. Elkmont, Tennessee. This is the one that was found up in the mountains by a hiker accidentally. Imagine walking through the woods in a national park and stumbling upon a deserted house, half hidden in the undergrowth. Then another and another. This is what happened to Jordan Lyles as he was exploring Smoky Mountain National Park near Elkmont, Tennessee. The homes are the remains of a vacation community called the Wonderland Club, which included a hotel, clubhouse, and several houses. Built in 1912, the site was enjoyed by members for only a few short years. In the 1920s and 30s, the land it was on became part of the new national park. But many of the residents fought to keep their homes. Instead of selling their land outright, they negotiated lifetime leases that allowed them to stay. The last leases ended in 2001, and since then the remaining buildings have fallen into decay. Lyles, a photography enthusiast, became fascinated by the Wonderland Club site and its history. In 2013, he created an eerie video tour of the structures, documenting their buckled wooden floors, caved-in roofs, and ripped screen doors, dilapidated details that make this young ghost town undeniably creepy. And who doesn't like creepy, right? Island of the Dolls, Mexico. I can't pronounce that. La de las Americas, whatever, was the home of a hermit, Julian Santana Barrera, who lived isolated on the Exchamlico Canal. Legend has it that he found a girl drowned in the canal and hung dolls around the island to appease her spirit. The island became a popular tourist attraction, with many visiting with dolls on hand to add to the collection. In 2001, Barrera was sadly found drowned, supposedly in the same spot as the girl he had once found. You can still visit the island and be greeted by unblinking, spooky eyes, and the dolls, too. And the dolls, don't forget the dolls. So, what unblinking eyes are we talking about if we're not talking about and the dolls, too? Pleasure Beach, Connecticut. Aha. The Pleasure Beach Peninsula is located on the Long Island Sound and was originally accessible by a wooden bridge that connected beach cottages to Bridgeport. The bridge burned down in 1996 and was never replaced, but you can still get to the holiday village by water taxi, boat, or a 2-mile walk across a stretch of beach that connects Pleasure Beach to Stratford. The once vibrant vacation spot now lies in ruins, with remnants of the movie theater and decaying beach cottages. Unfortunately, nothing remains of the once impressive Pleasure Beach amusement park, established in 1892 and closed in 1950. In recent weeks, an environmental crisis at Bridgeport meant that the recently refurbished beachside faculties, including the docks and boardwalks, were once again abandoned. These little places like this, they get a small little rebirth, they spring back up and they do good for a little bit, but then it's like they kind of wan off again. I think it's kind of sad, but anyway. Alton, Texas, and Goatman's Bridge. Ooh. Okay. For a town that no longer exists, Alton has a fascinating history. In 1848, the Texas legislature decided that Alton would become the county seat of government for Denton County, replacing the community of Pinckneyville. November 15, 1967, police discover an abandoned car beside an old Alton bridge, 5 miles south of Denton, Texas. A rash of mysterious disappearances are becoming alarmingly routine on a chilling stretch of road that is known by locals as the Goatman's Bridge. Constructed in 1884, the bridge connected Louisville to Alton. The turn of the century brought a black goat farmer and his family to a residence just north of the bridge, and a few short years later, Oscar Washburn was known as a dependable, honest businessman. North Texans enduringly began to call him the Goat Man. But the success of a black man was still unwelcome, and Klansmen in the local government turned to violence after he displayed a sign on Alton Bridge: "This way to the Goat Man's." One night in August 1938, with their headlights off, Klansmen crossed the bridge, dragged the Goat Man from his family, and lynched him over the side. Peering over into the water, his murderer saw a rope, but not his body. In a panic, the Klansmen returned to the Washburn residence and killed his family in cold blood. Since the disappearance of the Goat Man, there have been many strange sightings on and near Old Alton Bridge. Some say his spirit still haunts these woods. Locals tell the story and follow it with a warning. Those who cross the bridge with no headlights will be met on the other side by the goat man. After numerous abandoned automobiles and missing persons, a new bridge was constructed directly downstream. But Old Alton Bridge, the Goat Man's Bridge, remains still open to foot traffic. It is under surveillance by the paranormal investigators of North Texas and the Denton County Paranormal Investigators. Oscar Washburn was never seen again and has been presumed dead since his attempted murder. LeHunt, Kansas. LeHunt is an old abandoned cement plant outside of Independence, now in ruins. Also on site is an old cemetery. The ruins are said to be haunted by the ghost of a worker who died there. There is also evidence that people have gathered there to perform some sort of magic rituals. Magic rituals, okay. In other words, they're saying that devil worship was going on, I guess, basically. LeHunt was once a small town supported primarily by the United Kansas Portland Cement Company. Little is left of the town beyond a few old ruins of the cement plant and an old cemetery. Once a thriving community, now the town can only be discerned from overgrown avenue of trees, broken sidewalks, and foundations hidden by grass and heavy brush. The old site of the cement plant is said to be haunted by the ghost of one of the workers by the name of Bohr, B-O-H-R, Bohr, who died in a tragic accident at the plant. As the story goes, Bohr fell into a vat of concrete and his body was never recovered. After this disastrous event, his co-workers embedded his wheelbarrow, pick and shovel into a wall of concrete that was under construction at the time. His name as well as his pickaxe can still be seen at the factory ruins. So in other words, something got built with this dude's body in it somewhere. That's a thought. So if you if you're in a building that has a concrete base of some sort anywhere around that area that seems haunted, perhaps it's because Mr. Bohr is in your concrete. Anyway. This is the last one that I have, and so our show is going to be only a little over an hour long, but that's okay. At least we still got to do one. Glenville, Delaware. This is a ghost town in progress. Meg reminds me of the guy that fell into the trestle here when they put the railroad through. That's bad. Anyway. This is a ghost town in progress. Glenville is a neighborhood on Route 4 west of Newport that is being bought out and abandoned by the county or state because of excessive flooding. The back of the neighborhood has always been prone to flooding by Red Clay Creek, which runs behind the neighborhood. And the straw that broke the camel's back was the flooding in the past 6 years with Hurricane Floyd in 2000 and Hurricane Isabel in 2004. Officials got plans ready to abandon the flood-prone areas after Floyd hit. And after Isabel hit, the abandonment officially went into effect. As of October 2004, the designated section is completely abandoned and is almost completely fenced off as well, as the area is being prepared into a park. Also, as of this time, all the foundations are there and some houses are still standing because the demolition crew hasn't gotten to those houses yet. Why would you make a park out of a flooded land? Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. Anyway, hello, Wendell. Sorry, you came in on the last end here. Centralia, yeah, I talked about that one. Yeah, it is. Still got the gases going on, but I think there's like um, a handful of people that still live there that refuse to leave if they haven't died yet. Why anybody would want to stay and live in a town breathing noxious gases is beyond me. But you know, if that's your home, I can understand people not wanting to give up their home. We've talked about a lot of ghost towns and semi ghost towns and some supposedly haunted ghost towns, and there's probably more that aren't listed here. I'm sure there are. There's plenty of ghost towns out there. Nevada, I think, is overrun with some ghost towns, but and I don't remember seeing much of anything about Nevada. But anyway, old man Smith's uncle, he's in nursing home. Okay. I haven't been able to keep watch over here in the chat room, so if I miss something, y'all guys let me know real quick. Something's still creepy. I don't know what's still creepy, but anyway, um, being as all out of ghost towns here to talk about less, I do have another. Bear with me here just a second. I got to find my. Where is it? Where is it? I may have something in here. I may have something in here that wasn't in the other ones. So let me see what I got here. Okay, got that one. Schwab, I got that one. That one. That one. That one. Centralia, we just talked about that. Thurman, yeah. Glen, yeah. Louisville, Florida, yeah. Essex County Jail, Annex, North Caldwell, New Jersey. A prison is always haunting, but an abandoned one exudes an even creepier feeling, especially the austere Victorian-style Essex County Jail in New Jersey, first built in 1873 and expanded over the years to include an auditorium, hospital, and cafeteria. Much of the jail faculty was closed down in the 1970s, and it was abandoned for good in the late 1990s. Left to decay and vandalism by thrill seekers, inmates' files filled with mugshots and rap sheets soon covered the floor of the auditorium, while shotgun ports and tear gas modules on the ceilings of the mess hall remained to remind trespassers of their potential harrowing fate should they be judged criminals. Yeah, what about that? Okay, we talked about that. Rolling Acres Mall, I think we talked about that, yeah. We talked about that. St. Elmo County, established in the late 1870s. St. Elmo was once a high-polluting gold mining town and popular whistle stop on the Pacific Railroad. It boasted 2,000 residents and 130 mines, and enough hotels, brothels, saloons, and dance halls to keep everybody in town happily cutting a rug. When the Alpine Tunnel closed in 1910, however, the piano music stopped. Today, there's little left save a cabin where you can stay and a general store open during the summer that sells antiques and rents four-wheelers. The cupboards are full, the store stocked, and the kitchen sink still overflow with dishes. The only thing missing is people. They got out of Dodge about 100 years ago. Yes, call them ghost towns without ghosts. Once bustling with bars, brothels, and bandits, today these 10 mostly mining hamlets are eerily abandoned, freakishly desolate, and so perfectly preserved that you'd think they'd been deserted overnight. This is one of the things that really interested me about some of these supposed ghost towns. Ashcroft County. Um, some of them were left with the store shelves stocked. You could go into one of the houses and the dinner table would be set like they just stepped out and were coming back to sit down to eat. You know, I mean, um, what would create something like that where people would just leave everything, okay, and disappear? You know, their dishes still on the table like they were about to have a meal. The store clerk leaving all their shelves stocked and everything, you know, and just poof, they're gone. So that's an interesting thought when you talk about some of this stuff. Um, I don't know if we talked about Ashcroft. Discovering silver in 1889, two prospectors eager to make a quick buck created a miners' protective association, and in a mere 2 weeks recruited 20 people to lay out streets and build a courthouse. Within 5 years, Ashcroft boasted 20 saloons and more than 3,500 residents. But like most mining towns, as at some point they ran out of stuff to mine, and by the end of 1885, only 100 residents remained. Interest was renewed in the 1930s as winter sports became popular, and there were plans to turn the town into a European-style ski resort. In fact, the Highland Bavarian Lodge was even built by Ted Ryan and the captain of America's gold medal Olympic boasted team, Billy Fisk. When Fisk died fighting in World War II, however, plans fizzled and Ashcroft's been a bona fide ghost town with only about 9 buildings ever since. Interestingly, the plans for the ski resort moved about 10 miles north to a then much smaller town named Aspen. How about that? Okay, we talked about that. Let's see. Rhyolite, we talked about that. Just making sure I ain't skipping anything that I might have had in this other. And why do I have 30,000 copies of this same thing here? Virginia City, former home of the famous frontierswoman Calamity Jane. This old gold mining town, East 1863, was known for its rough and tumble, hard knock ways. In fact, the remote spot didn't have law enforcement or a justice system, and as a result, could brag about a seriously high crime rate. Robberies and murder were the norm, and gangs of outlaws known as road agents killed 100 people between 1863 and 1864 alone. Virginia City briefly served as the capital of the Montana Territory, and at one point 10,000 residents called it home. While more than half of the city's buildings are still originals, they've been restored, and the town, which now rocks tours, live music, and period-style cabaret shows, has been turned into a tourist spot by the state. Okay. Elk Falls, Kansas. Despite billing itself as the world's largest ghost town, there are actually still about 100 people, mostly members of an artsy commune, living among the ruins of Elks Falls, so it's not technically abandoned, but close enough. Founded in 1870 by R.H. Nichols, the settlement at its peak maintained 2 stores, a dentist, doctor's office, and multiple barber shops, not to mention a school with 200 pupils. When the town lost its bid to become the county seat in 1873, though everybody split, a lot of original structures remain, including over 40 outhouses that you can visit on popular annual tour. Yeah, I want to go to a place and visit 40 outhouses. That's the highlight of my day. Transgender bathrooms for everybody. Gotta love that. Okay. Let me see if I got something else here. Okay. Got looks like I'm gonna be okay. I've got one more, I think, here. Batstow Village, New Jersey. Oh, excuse me. With a name randomly derived from the Swedish word Bastow. Kind of sounds like a vampire movie. Meaning bathing places. Wow. This Jersey town was once a bustling ironworks that supplied the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War. That's interesting. Founded in 1766, it was essentially a company town, owned and run for 92 years by William Richards before the discovery of coal in Pennsylvania led to a steady decline in the New Jersey iron industry. Industrialist Joseph Wharton, yep, that Wharton, stepped in and bought the town in 1876, experimenting with agriculture and manufacturing before also throwing in the terrible towel to presumably start his little business school in Philadelphia. Over 48 of the original structures remain today, including Bustall Mansion, a sawmill, a blacksmith, ice and milk houses, a carriage house and stable, and a general store. You can even mail letters at the post office. It's totally open. The buildings have been fully restored and are maintained as a historical site with a museum and visitor center. And that, finally, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe is the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. We're fresh out of stuff to talk about. I hope y'all guys enjoyed this. And I think I did a pretty good job. Would have been a little better if I would have, been able to bounce things off of somebody, but that's okay. Stuff happens. And we will carry on and endeavor to persevere, as the Indian dude said on Outlaw Josie Wales. We endeavored to persevere. And we thought about that for a while, and then we declared war on the Union. Hey, anyway, thank you. Let's see. What do we have? Wednesday, Ghostly Stories, episode 2. After the comeback show that I did. Way back there somewhere. Anyway, that's coming up Wednesday. Friday, July 1st, I have Matt Carr and MPI Paranormal. And then the following, let me flip over here on my little calendar. The 13th July, Janice Brunner and NCPI Paranormal. On the 11th, we have Elementals, and that's far enough ahead, everybody. You just have to imagine what comes after that. You never know. Okay, two more this week. Yeah, two more this. No, yeah, that's right, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Two more this week. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Meg. Jerry, whoever else is still over there. I appreciate it very much. And we will be back on the 29th with Ghostly Stories. Same time, same channel, Wednesday and Friday. Yes. Um, until then, and let me get where I can do this. We will say fairly well, and we will see everybody Wednesday night. Sorry about the delay, people. My computer decided it wanted to be a douchebag, and it took me a little while to get things rolling again. And then, unfortunately, with that having happened, I lost Christina for tonight, but that's okay. Stuff happens. We will get back in full force together soon, hopefully Wednesday night. And I will see all you guys Wednesday night. Good night, everybody.